Greetings, greetings, greetings. This is I, your King, King Clifford Jefferson, reincarnation of King Edgar the Peaceful, the one who was created in the image of Christ, descendant of God, the fifth kind of man Jew, son of folk, ruler of Jerusalem, better known as the city of peace, representing the station in lieu of the ascension under Psalms 1104 in regards to the order of Melchizedek as the King of Righteousness or the King of Peace, i.e. King Edgar the Peaceful. We know King Edgar means rich and fierce. All right, we know that they were related to the family of Margaret of Scotland, who was the wife of Henry I, the son of William the Conqueror, who invaded England. And through that linkage, the Plantagenet crown is related to the kings of the House of Wessex as a result of the marriage of Empress Matilda and Godfrey the fifth kind of man Jew, son of folk, ruler of Jerusalem. So in that sense, we are called kinfolks. All right, we are called kinfolks. We are all of the same family. It's pretty much a rehashment of what was spoken about in my last video. So actually will be a part two in regards to Luke chapter 2, section 49, okay? Luke chapter 2, section 29 or verse 29, all right? So without further ado, let's get started. It is September 7th, 2023. This is the Berber year 2973. And I greet you in the name of all our Berber ancestors, going back to time immemorial, and even before then, before we manifested on the plane that they may manifest it, i.e. this earth plane. We know that matter is composed of what we call earth, and matter was what we were created from as the envelope for which the soul was used to animate or give animation to the creature, which you call a human being. You know that there are all types of creatures, and every creature is subject to the laws of the creator, all right? And that law of action is not discriminatory, it's not rational or irrational to any inanimate or animate object. So we must understand the part we play in this great circle of life, and keyword circle. All right, so once again, promise not to hold you too long, but this is part two of the previous lecture I just did in regards to the title being, let me just get the title. The title being Luke 2, verse 49. Did you know I had to be about my father's house, about my father's business? Did you know I must be in my father's house about my father's business? And we know that Jesus' business is his father's business, you know, and it's about following the laws of action of the household, of the family, all right? We know that when Jesus was traveling, pursuant to Luke chapter 2, verse 49, he said he was traveling with his family and friend in a company. And it says the parent didn't realize where their child was, you know, and they searched for him. And when they realized where he was arguing with the doctors of the law, you know, and, you know, when they said, well, why have you, or basically not told us where you were? He said, did you not know that? Well, why are you questioning about me going about my father's business? And we got to really think about the father's business. What is the father's business? Jesus was concerned about his father's business. And pursuant to Psalms 1104, as well as concerning what was prophesied before Jesus came upon the scene in lieu of the abstract story, goes back to what we call Solomon's Temple. Okay, it goes back to Solomon's Temple in 1 Kings, when Solomon is supposed to see as king under King David. We know King David was the father of the tribes of Israel, i.e. the 12 tribes. And the 12 tribes are associated with the kingdom of Jerusalem. All right. We're just going to go through that story again and bring more concrete to it, as well as go over Genesis 1, verses 26 to 27, in regards to us being created in the image of our fathers and mothers. All right. And we're going to revisit the verse as well. Also, as we discussed yesterday, that circle actually means church. All right. Circle actually means church. And we know that circle denotes to a lot of things, including measurement. All right. We know that our circle is a complete 360-degree circle, which is perpetual, it's infinite. It does not stop. If it stops, that means that there must be some type of what we call stoppage, all right? Some type of knotting. You know what I'm saying? This brings on what we call the knot theory. The knot theory, all right? And knot theory based off the measurement or geometrics of measurement. You know what I'm saying? Based off the knot theory, which is based off unknot. The term unknot means that it's not knotted. It's a complete circle. All right. So before we get into the abstract explanation, we want to visit the concrete from which we determine our explanation. All right. So without further ado, let's get started. I promise I won't hold you long. Ready? Where did my screen go? Sure, that screen up. Give me. Okay. Let's start here. Luke chapter 2, verse 49. As always, I have my coffee. Jesus at the temple. It didn't say Jesus at the church. It said finding Jesus at the temple. All right. The gospel then provided the only story of Jesus' childhood in the canonical gospel. Then Jesus' 12, his family travels to Jerusalem for the Passover festival. All right. Then they leave with a large group of their relatives and friends. And after a day, they realize Jesus is not with them. They go back to Jerusalem after 3 days of looking, find him in the temple, talking with the temple teachers. His parents scold him for running off, but Jesus replied that they should have known where he was. Did you have not known I had to be in my father's house or about my father's business? His family fails to understand what he is talking about. They all go to Nazareth. So Jesus said he is about his father's business in his father's house. And apparently his father's house is the temple, because that's where they found him in, all right? Because Jesus is preparing to take the place of his father in regards to what we call his birthright, or what we call an inheritance. Now, this so-called father happens to have the name or the term or the metaphor Lord. as stated in Psalm 11:04. All right, Lord sat at the right hand of the Lord. All right, in regards to the order of Melchizedek, known as the King of Righteousness or the King of Peace, which is regards to Jesus becoming Christ, becoming the Christ in the image of Christ, according to what we call the ascension, Christ's ascension to the throne. All right, not talking abstract, but talking concrete. All right, so let's revisit. Psalms 110. The second and final Hebrew Bible mentions of Malachi Zodok in Psalms 11:04. The man translation that follows the Septuagint translate it as, the Lord has sworn and will not repent that thou art a priest forever after the manner of Melchizedek. All right, after the order of Melchizedek. That brings me here to the ascension. The ascension of Christ is the session of Christ. Everyone sees that. The session of Christ or a heavenly session is a Christian doctrine, stating that Jesus Christ is seated at the right hand of God, the Father in heaven. The word session is an archaic noun meaning sitting. Although the word formerly meant the act of sitting down, its meaning is somewhat broader and carrying English usage. So English usage is not an abstract usage, it's a concrete usage, because English is still the preferred and the pre-existing customary what we call national language in this present day. And is used to refer to a sitting for various reasons, such as a teaching session or a court or a council being in session. Okay, once again, not talking abstract, but talking concrete. All right, in English usage, it is used to refer to a sitting for various reasons, such as a teaching session or a court or a council being in session. The New Testament also depicts Jesus as standing and walking in heaven, i.e., walking. Walking is a physical action, a physical attribute, all right? But the session of Christ has special theological significance because of its connection to the role of Christ as king. The session of Christ is one of the doctrines specifically mentioned in the Apostles' Creed, where sitting on the right hand of God, the Father Almighty, immediately follows the statement of the ascension, okay? The ascension. Let's tap that real quick. We're talking about the day of judgment, the day of resurrection. The ascension of Jesus, ascent of Jesus is a Christian belief, reflecting in the major Christian creeds and confessional statements that Jesus ascended to heaven after his resurrection, where he was exalted as Lord in Christ, sitting at the right hand of God. Psalm 11:04, as well as 1 Kings, dealing with the Solomon's temple. All right, that goes back to the history dealing with Solomon's temple. The doctrine is also found in Islam, where Jesus believed not to have been crucified, but to have ascended while still alive. Okay? He's going through the missing years of Jesus Christ. All right? The missing years of Jesus Christ. Let's go back. Because according to Luke chapter 2, verse 49, Jesus is missing. Jesus is missing. All right? So let's go here. And did those speak in ancient times? Ancient times we call time immemorial, all right? We have to follow the line, the path, direction from where we are now back to the time of the so-called person metaphor as the name Jesus. So this article from William Blake said, and did those speak in ancient time, is a poem by William Blake from the preface to his epic Milton, a poem in 2 books. One of the collections of writing known as the prophetic book. The date of 1804 on the title page is probably when the plates were begun, but the poem was printed in 1808. Today it is best known as a hymn of Jerusalem, with music written by Sir Hubert Parry in 1916. All right, let's go a little further. It is often assumed that the poem was inspired by the apocryphal, revelation story that a young Jesus, i.e. Jesus in reference to Luke chapter 2, him being missing. This is with the missing years of Jesus. They say he was missing for a couple of days. We know one day to us is like 1,000 years, according to the scriptures. All right? One day to us is like 1,000 years. And they often assume that the poem was inspired by a apocryphal story that a young Jesus accompanied by Joseph of Arimathea as a tin merchant traveled to what is now England and visited Glastonbury during its unknown years. However, according to the British folklore, it's the word folk. Folklore becomes a lore when you don't know the history, i.e. time out of mind. You know what I'm saying? So the common law is not about what's written or recorded, it's about what's being practiced at that time with the people in society. Because the circle represents completion, 360 degrees, it represents a house, all right? God's house, all right? Because God represents completion. It says, however, according to the British folklore scholar A.W. Smith, there was a little reason to believe that an oral tradition concerning a visit made by Jesus to Britain existed before the early part of the 20th century. You hear that? The 20th century. Instead, the poem draws on older stories repeated in Milton's History of Great Britain. That Joseph of Arimathea alone traveled to preach to the ancient Britons after the death of Jesus. The poem theme is linked to the book of Revelations, chapter 3, verse 12 and 21, verse 2, describing a second coming where Jesus established a new Jerusalem, all right? A new Jerusalem. Churches in general and the Church of England in particular have long used Jerusalem as a metaphor for heaven, a place of universal love and peace, all right? In the most common interpretation of the poem, Blake asks whether a visit of Jesus briefly created heaven in England in contrast to the dark satanic mills of the Industrial Revolution, i.e. we're talking about these corporations, because the corporations are called monopolies, and monopolies that were created by way of registration, according to case law, are known as Frankenstein. We know Frankenstein is a monster. A monster is not living, it's not living. You know what I'm saying? And if you're not living, then that means that you're dead. If you're dead, that means that you come from the underworld, i.e. in reference to hell, are under control of what we call Satan, which are other metaphors that we'll visit in a second to make them concrete. All right. But if you're living, that means that you're of God because God created you in his image. Male and female, he created them. All right. And we know God created angelic beings. That's where the origin of angel come from, or angel, which is the history that makes reference to what we call the Anglo-Saxons. All right. All right. In the most common interpretation of the poem, Blake asks whether a visit by Jesus briefly created heaven in England, in contrast to dark satanic myths of the Industrial Revolution, i.e., we're talking about corporations. All right. We know the creation of the corporation, the people who are in the corporation, i.e., the aggregate, or i.e., the corporation soul. All right. We know an aggregate is made up of a bunch of people under the brain, such as Frankenstein. We know corporation soul is under the auspices of one person, such as a natural person. The natural person was created in the image of God. All right. Poem states that and did those feet in ancient times walk upon England, mountains green, and was the holy Lamb of God on England's pleasant pasture seen. And did the countless divine shine forth upon as clouded hills, and was Jerusalem built here among these dark satanic mills. Bring me my bowl, our burning gold. Bring me my hours of desire. Bring me my spirit, O clouds unfold. Bring me my chariot of fire. Okay? Once again, bring me my bowl, our burning gold. Bring me my hours of desire. Bring me my spirit, O cloud unfold. Bring me my chariot of fire. I will not cease from mental fight, nor shall my sword sleep in my hand, till we have built Jerusalem in England, green and pleasant land. Okay? So hence the word spirit, all right? You know what I'm saying? Spirit, we know that means rich in spirit. And we know King Edgar name was meant rich in spirit, i.e. descendants, i.e. meaning the spirit sided versus distaff sided. Okay? Spirit sided versus distaff sided. Okay? So let's get into this. Genesis verse 1, 26, 27. And God said, let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds, and of the air, and over the cattle, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created humankind in his image, and in the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. So that means that you can't be a human because you are given authority over all things of human, as human defined in the Black Law Dictionary as being monsters, because monsters are dead, all right? Monsters are considered dead. We're not animals, right? There's a distinction between us as animals and us as what we soon assume as humans. But humans does not properly identify us because humans will be consistent of that was made from that of matter. And matter is that of the clay in which God formed you in and enveloped you with the soul to give that clay, i.e. that matter, what we call animation, to be able to animate it, all right? Give it life, all right? So we have life control over all things created by our creator, which we descend down from. So we have to understand who are we in our true and sense of the word ourself. We are soul beings, not just physical beings. The physical being is subject to arbitrary time created by our creator. You know what I'm saying? For a limited time to live on this plane. This is not it. All right, let's prove it. House. We know Jesus was in his father's house, and we know it was a temple. All right, it was a temple. House is just a metaphor, but the name has an origin of where it comes from. Contrast to that metaphor. House is a single unit residing building. It may range in complexity from rudimentary hut to a complex structure of wood, masonry, concrete, or other material, outfitted with plumbing, electrical, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so I got a question. We're in what we call the year 2023. All right. If this is the modern age or the advanced age that we're so-called say we're in, and the Middle Ages was the modern age, where contrast to the Middle Ages was the Dark Ages, which didn't have the advancements that we had now, okay? Which at that time was pretty much carts with horses carrying them, houses made out of huts, or out of mud or concrete, because we know these are all elements of the earth, all right? So if the Dark Ages is contrast to the modern age, all right, which I'm associating Jesus with, all right, and the Middle Ages, all right, because our Jesus is King Edgar the Peaceful, all right, who was rich in spirits, as quoted in Richard, what's his name, Mr. Blake's poem, all right? But the Jesus that they make a reference to, based off the metaphor, goes back to the time out of mind, which denotes to the same type of society that was in the Middle Ages. Because they were living in huts and stuff too as well in that time of the time of Jesus. All right? Or was that not the case? Because if that was not the case, then how of a sudden we came from advancement from time immemorial, going back to a time out of mind, going back to what people say we descend down from, to all of a sudden wind up in the Middle Ages and be walking around with horses and buggies, living as vagabonds and bums, i.e. poor people, to all of a sudden to the modern age. That does not make sense. So either the time era in which they're trying to make us believe that Jesus lived in was false, and the time he really lived in was the Middle Ages, because the same type of society in the Middle Ages existed in that time, going back to what they talk about Jerusalem with the abstract story, okay? We need to understand that, all right? Etymology. The English word house derived directly from the Old English hus, meaning dwelling, shelter, home, house, which in turn derived from Proto-Germanic husan, which reconstructed by etymological analysis, which is of unknown origin. Unknown origin. The house itself gave rise to the letter B through an early Proto-Semitic hieroglyphic symbol depicted in a house. The symbol was called Bayat, Bet, or Beth, in various related languages, and became Beta, the second letter of the Greek alphabet. Beth is the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet, all right? And Alpha and Omega, all right? The Greek letter before it was used by the Romans, Biat in Arabic means house, while the Maltese Bejet refers to the roof of the house, all right? So we see where the word house comes from, etymology, but they look at it as it from the origin as a surname, all right? This goes back to the house of name. House. As you can see, you see an anchor right here and a cloud. There's a cloud, all right? There's an anchor and there's a cloud. The name house is origin, house is origin is France and England, all right? The name house comes from one of the family having worked as a person employed at the house. So that when you go back to Luke 2nd, chapter 49, Jesus was working in his father's house. All right. He was employed in his father's house. His house was not a company or a corporation. His house was a religious house. All right. Built either out of bricks, stone, mud, whatever they were using at that particular time. All right. The surname house is derived from the Old English word hus, which means house. In some cases, the name house may be a form of the surname house. It is thought to have been the occupational name for a person employed at the house, in most cases with a religious house or a covenant, okay? So it has nothing to do with no corporation, no business, do what we call registration. Because if you got your business, it must be given by a charter from the kings of England who are subject to what we call a state church, not a state, because when the state and church separated, it took the authority away from the church. And we know the word church is what we go to in regards to the temple. And this is where we find Jesus at, in the temple. All right. It's called temple church, when we'll get to in a second. All right. So Jesus' house, and it says Jesus was tend to his father's business in his father's house. All right. And we see, as we said, a cloud and an anchor. So in England, let's see what the symbol is in France. All right, there's another family crest for the coat of arms where the name is also found. All right, it's also found in Normandy. All right, so those who are following along, if you're concerned about the house of Jesus in your own house, you should be following along with me. All right. Okay. All right. So where are we at? Going back to Luke 22. Luke chapter 2, verse 49. Gospel then provides the only story of Jesus' child, the canonical gospel, in Jesus 12 and his family travel to Jerusalem for the Passover festival. Then they leave with a large group to their relatives, are friendly, and after the day, they realize Jesus is not with them. Now they said in Jerusalem, Jerusalem means city of peace. All right. Haru Salam, city of peace. All right. And we also know that Jesus said he went to heaven when he ascended. All right. He went to heaven in his ascension and sat with the right hand of the Father in God's house, right? And God's house is in heaven. So let's look at God's house in heaven, because heaven is not an abstract place, because the name originated in somewhere. Let's go to the name heaven. As you can see, the name is associated in Wales, France, and Ireland. Let's look at what it says in France. This is Wales. Let's look what the family crest says in France. Heaven, France and Wales. They go that anchor. Okay? They go that anchor. As we can see. And let's go back to house and look at what house means in England. We get France, where you see the anchor and the cloud. Well, that was England. Let's see what France said. Is it France I'm looking for? No, it's not France. Give me a second. Okay. I'm looking for, as you can see, heaven. Heaven, as you can see, you see the anchor. All right. So a house, you see an anchor and a cloud. All right. You see an anchor and a cloud. Now you see in heaven, you see an anchor, right? You see an anchor. And what's his name in Wales? That's the other origin where the name heaven is found. Herefordshire. All right, now why is this important? I'm about to show you. Okay. It says that we were created in the image of God, right? You form man from the dust of the ground. The dust denotes to what we call matter, because all things are made of what we call matter. Okay, so here's the word matter, dealing with the surname matter, not just the metaphor, but the actual word matter. The origin of the name is Germany, Scotland, and Ireland. All right, matter. The surname matter was first found in Kincardineshire, a former county on the northwest coast of Grampian region of Scotland and part of the Aberdeenshire, okay? Region Aberdeenshire. Council area since 1996, where they held their family from early times, and their first record appeared in the early census rolls taken by the early kings of Britain to determine the rate of taxes on their subject. That's the surname matter. Just look at the word mother. As you can see, the same coat and family crest. So the word mother and matter are the same. The word mother and matter are the same. All right? Male and female are the same. When you go back here, and God said, let us. So it's not one entity. It's two entities making the humankind in our image. It said, let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over fish of the sea and over the birds of the air and over the cattle and over every creeping thing that creep upon the earth, i.e. matter. Mother means matter. Okay, but mother has or derives from an Ethereum just like we do. Because it said, let us, it didn't say, let me make humankind in our image. It said, let us make humankind in our image. This is talking about Genesis 1 through 26. This is dealing with parenting. Raising children. This is what this is talking about. All right. Okay. So if you come from God's house, right? God's house is in heaven. And Jesus is bringing God's house, which is in heaven, here on earth. All right? Here on earth. And if you're earth, that means you're composed of matter. And matter was composed or had the benefit of being employed with a soul, a consciousness. All right? And had the highest of all that was created by those supreme beings. Out of all things that were created on this plane of things made manifested called matter, along with the fish of the sea, the cattle, and every other creeping thing, right? You were giving authority over everything on this plane of things made manifested as a result of you being descended from the society created by those who said, let us make humankind in our own image. So we are nothing more than spectators of events that we're allowed to put here to us through what we call schooling, by parenting. God is teaching us a lesson. You are being taught a lesson. All right? If God is teaching lessons, right, to his children, then the devil is teaching lessons as well. Because the devil is Satan. Satan is a monster, and monster is not living. It's dead. The matter is not given life until it's given the soul. So absent of the soul, you're dead. You have no consciousness. You have no soul. You were created in the image of God and God's house and God's society. In God's temple. That means that you must be part of the church, i.e. the temple church, because that's where you found Jesus. And Luke the 2nd, verse 49. His parents wasn't there. They didn't even know what he was talking about. Nor did the friends. So if the friends and family didn't know what he was talking about, nor those who weren't family and friends, then guess what position the friends and the family were in? When he was making reference to God's house, his father's house, and the business of his father, which they did not know. He told them, did you know I must be about my father's house, about my father's business? So whatever you talking about is irrelevant. Jesus arguing in the temple with the doctrines of the law in regards to his ascension, because these people are already skilled, learned scholars, master scholars. But in the eyes of Jesus, this infant, they didn't know a thing. Because he was not being taught by them. He was not being taught by his parents. He's being taught by his father. He's being taught by his father, and his father is the church. His father representing the king, and the church is Christ's bride. All those who come in his church, we are married by way what we call tying the knot. When a man and a woman get married, they are what they call tying the knot. Okay? A perpetual knot. All right? It's a knot that's existing from that one family that came from another family with the perpetuity that was created from the creator that created the family and from the door. All right? We'll get into that in a second. All right? So let's visit. Oh, we get you. All right. Let's see. Circle. So everybody can say circle. Everybody say circle. All right. These are abstract talk when you say circle. When you talk about a circle and not denote it to the origin where the circle comes from, then it becomes abstract. All right. It becomes abstract. So let's talk abstract, because this is what majority of we talk. as you can see in the glyph here, within the geometric shape, because we know geo means earth and metry means to measure, you see a spear, which is a circle, all right? This is geometry talk, all right? It's geometry talk. So you're talking about first, second, and third dimensional spheres, all right? Because everything starts from the circle, and the circle is perpetual. It does not stop. It's infinite, all right? Zero-dimensional, one-dimensional, two-dimensional, three-dimensional, and on to the fourth, i.e. fourth dimension. A circle is a shape consisting of all points in a plane that are at any given distance from a given point to the center. The distance between any point of the circle and centroid is called the radius. Usually the radius is required to be a positive number, a circle with r equaling 0, all right? A single point in a degenerate case. The article is about circles and the Euclidean geometry, in particular, the Euclidean plane, except where otherwise noted. All right, so this is abstract talk. This is abstract talk. We want to continue on the concrete. All right, because we know if you draw a circle, that means that the circle is not infinite because it had a beginning and had an end. And time never was when man was not. At the life of time when we begin, the time will come where there will be no more. So we cannot have an ending or a beginning because a circle is infinite unless somebody messed with that infinity. Y'all don't hear me. Somebody's playing God. So in order for us to understand the circle, we not only go to the origin of the word circle. I'm not Greek, so I won't look for a circle in the Greek origin. I look for circle in the English origin. All right? That's what I look for. So let's look. It says the word circle derived from the Greek, as they say, itself is a metathesis of Homeric Greek, meaning hoop or ring. The origins of the word circus or circuit are closely related. Why? Because they are metaphors. All right. The circle has been known since before the beginning of recorded history. Natural circles would have been observed, such as the moon, sun, and short plants, stalks blowing in the wind or sand, which forms a circle shape in the sand. The circle is the basis for the wheel, which relative inventions such as gears. Hold for 1 second. Okay. What was that? Gears make much of the modern machinery possible. In the mathematics, the study of the circle helped to inspire the development of geometry, astronomy, and calculus. Did you hear that? So in mathematics, the study of the circle has helped inspire the development of geometry, astronomy, and calculus. Early science, particularly geometry and astrology and astronomy, was connected to the divine for most medieval scholars. You hear that? Medieval scholars. All right? They said medieval scholars, and many believed that there was something intrinsically divine and perfect that could be found in circles. All right? In circles. Hold for 1 second. So let's go to the origin of circle. Hence the word circle, church, and chancery. You hear Todd say that all the time. Circle, church, and chancery. As you can see, the family crest for church, circle is a church. All right? Hold that thought for a second. right? So the word circle, as you can see, the family crest is a church, as you can see. So let's go back to circle. The word circle, derives from the Greek itself is a metathesis of the Homo Greek, meaning hoop or ring. The origin of the word circuits and circuit are closely related. We know that a circle and the energy of a circle, since circuit is relative to circle, means that that's the source. All right, that's the power circuitry. If you cut the circuitry, then there's a shortage. All right. The word circus, hoops, and rings is synonymous because in the circus, people jump through hoops and rings. All right. People jump through hoops and rings. So people who are now using the word circle abstractly are jumping through hoops and rings as a result of the interpretation. Because the origin of the word church is, from their interpretation, is kirkos. So why did you call it a circle when in Greek it said kirkos? So let's look at the word kirkos, which is actually kirk. The surname Kirk is a typographic surname which was given, so you see it. Let's put Kirkos so you can see it. As you can see, same origin, Scotland and Ireland. So the word circle in Greek comes from Scotland and Ireland, all right? And you see in the family crest of circle is a church, but in the Greek word for circle is kirkos, which comes from Scotland and Ireland. Okay, everybody see that? Let's go here. And Kirk, let's look at Kirk one more time. It says Kirk is Germany, Scotland, and Ireland. All right. So Germany's always has something to do with it because we have been we have a foreign gene in us, i.e., foreign germs in us. All right. They're foreign to who we are or our makeup. All right. So let's hit the word German. German history, family crafts, coats of bone. It's available in Germany, England, France, Italy, and Ireland. Let's see what the coats are on for German. As you can see, Germany, the surname German is derived version of the Old High German gear, meaning spear or javelin. All right, as you can see, this German has a saber, which is used for cutting weeds. All right, to cut, i.e., to cut the gene. The surname German was first found in Hamburg, where the name German came from humble beginnings by gaining significant reputation and for its contribution to the emerging medieval society. Okay, it later became more prominent as numerous branches of the same house acquired greater properties, some of which were located in other countries. So as you can see, the word German and the ancient arms of German is familiar in England, France, as well as Italy. And the word German, according to German, means spear. And King Edgar means rich in spears. That's why the origin of the descent is called the spirit-sided. But as a result of German, i.e. germs, getting into our genes, our DNA, i.e. our agnatic succession has been cut, which we'll get into in a second, all right? So if it's been cut, that means we have no connection to God. And if we have no connection to God, that means that the opposite of God is what? The devil. And devil dwells what in hell. And hell is in what? The earth. And earth is made of what? Matter. And matter comes from what? The mother. All right. So this is how we got stolen out of our birthright, from the devil influencing the mother under what we call partus sequitur vitrem. Partus sequitur vitrem. All right. Devil. The surname occurs in many languages, but the only instance of which I can recollect in England is that of a monk, Relimus Cognimento Diabolus. The French devil, naturalized among us, has often been misunderstood to be the synonym of Satan, and various vowels changes have been made by the bearers of it to avoid this very objectionable notion. Hence, it is commonly written Deval, Devol, etc. While in record, Devol, Devil, and others are found. Okay, so look at hell. Hell, origin England. The surname Hell was first found in Kent, where they held a family seat as lords of the manor after the Battle of Hastings. All right. William, Duke of Normandy, having prevailed over King Harold, granted most of Harold Godwinson, granted most of Britain to his many victorious barons. It was not uncommon to find a baron or a bishop with 60 more lordships scattered throughout the country. These he gave to his sons, nephews, and other genealogies of his family, and they became known as undertenants. All right. They adopted the Norman system of surnames, which identified the undertenant with his holding so as to distinguish him from the senior stem of the family. Okay, so this is why hell is a reference to those who are considered undertenants, because the overtenant, or the one who were the lords, were those who are in heaven. All right? Lords were those who are in heaven, and the undertenants were those who were in hell, because you were subject to the Lord, i.e., God. That's why he said, let us make man in our own image. Not those who were the undertenants, but the descendants of those lords who were the overseers. All right? Who were the overseers. And we know that Jerusalem was ruled by who? Folk the Fifth. Folk history. As you can see, as I showed you, and for human and Yale men, which so white people so-called say they classify as, i.e. also known as cracker, as I showed you in my last video, you see the spirit that's being held up is broken. But you see here, the spirit is not broken, all right? The name folk reached England in a great wave of migration following the Norman conquest in 1066. It is based on the Norman personal name Folko. The line of these names descend from the noble house of Folko Nero, who held the title of the Counts of Anjou. All right? Godfrey the Fifth Count of Anjou, father was Folk the Fifth Count of Anjou, King of Jerusalem. All right? The King of Jerusalem was found under Godfrey of Bouillon, all right, which we come here. These are the Jews here. In the wars of Christ, Ever Bella Christi, the wars of Christ. When you're talking about the wars of Christ, we're talking about the war of the Crusades. Not talking about a time that never even existed. All right. The reason of the ancient France known as Arvergne is where the name Bouillon was born. All right. Bouillon was the name for someone who lived dwelling near the birch tree, derived the origin from Latin word betulia, which means birch tree. All right. Everybody see that? Let's go here. Bouillon was the founder of the Church of England as well as the Order of the Holy Sepulchre. Kingdom of Jerusalem. Order of the Holy Sepulchre. Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem. Everybody see that? Also called the Order of the Holy Sepulchre or Knights of the Holy Sepulchre. Once again, Knights of the Holy Sepulchre. You're talking about the Knights of Templar. This is who you're talking about. It's a Catholic order knighthood under the protection of the Holy See. So the Roman Catholic Church was protecting the knights, i.e. the Knights of the Crusade Knights, or the Knights of the Crusades. The Pope is the sovereign of the order. The order creates candidates as well as knights with the primary mission to support the Christian presence in the Holy Land. It is an internationally recognized order of chivalry. Everybody heard that? So if this is the case, then you must go into what we call Temple Church. Because the orders of the Holy Sepulchre, which was created for the knights, and the knights were called the Knights of Templar. Okay, so you must understand that if Godfrey of Bouillon was protector of the holy places under the Church of Holy Sepulchre, as well as on behalf of what we call the Kingdom of England, and the Kingdom of England was a kingdom set up for God's people or God's children, i.e. his descendants, i.e. his heirs. So you must understand the church itself, because we know in Luke 2nd, verse 49, it says that Jesus in infancy was in the temple arguing with the doctors of the law in lieu of the ascension, i.e. the session of Christ under the order of what we call Melchizedek. And he spoke about the authority that he was given was based on the instruction to run his father business. And his father business was the temple, i.e. the temple church. And the temple church was dealing with the matters and affairs that attorneys and lawyers dealt with. All right, how we know that? Let's check it out. Temple Church, a royal peculiar, i.e. the crown, in the Church of England. All right. So they make a reference to the Temple Church, i.e. the Order of the Holy Sepulchre, that in Jerusalem, it makes reference to the Church of England. You've seen it for yourself. The Temple Church, a royal peculiar in the Church of England, is a church in the city of London. The Plantagenet crown, the Plantagenet on the Gospel 5th Caravan Jew, the origin of the name comes from London, okay? The Temple Church is a royal peculiar in the Church of England, and the church is in the city of London, located between Fleet Street and the River Thames, built by the Knights Templars for their English headquarters and the Temple precinct. How could you be English and Roman at the same time? How could you be English and under the Roman jurisdiction at the same time? Rome crucified Jesus. That's where the thorns came from. All right. It was consecrated on the 10th of February in 1185. All right, by the Patriarch Heraclius of Jerusalem during the reign of King John. King John was the son of Henry II. Henry II was son of Godfrey, the fifth kind of man Jew, the son of Folk, the ruler of Jerusalem. Folk didn't rule Jerusalem until well after King John. All right, but King John is witnesses a ceremony in what we call temple, in the temple church, and reference to what we call the Knights Templar. All right, it served as the royalty treasury, supported by the role of the Knights Templar as the proto-international bankers. Everybody hear that? It is now jointly owned by the Inner Temple and Middle Temple in the Inns of Court, based on basis of the English legal profession. Once again, I repeat, it is now jointly owned by the Inner Temple and Middle Temple Inns of Court, basis of the English legal profession, i.e., now called the American Bar Association. Before you had the American Bar Association, all those who claimed to be master scholars of the law went to these temples, the Inner Temple, Middle Temple, i.e., the Outer Temple, that was taught in what we call Clifford's Inn. All right. It is famous for being a round church, a common design feature for the Knights Templar churches. And for its 13th and 14th century stone effigies, it was heavily damaged by German bombers during World War II and has since been greatly restored and rebuilt. So they're trying to hide it. All right, let's see. The Temple Domini, also called the Temple Domini, as they call the Dome of Rock, feature on the official sale of the orders of Grand Masters such as Everett des Barrets and Renaud de Fichiers, and along with the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, upon which it was based, soon became the architectural model for the round Templar churches across Europe. So as you can see, the order of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, as established by Godfrey of Bouillon, actually was patterned after what they call the Temple Church. The Temple Church. All right, this was borrowed from in all faith. The Knights Templar order was very powerful in England, with the master of the temple sitting in Parliament as primus, baro, the first baron and president of the realm. You hear that? The compound was regularly used as a residence by kings and by legates of the Pope. The temple also served as early safety deposit bank, sometimes in defiance of the crown's attempt to seize the funds of nobles who had entrusted their wealth there. The quasi-supra-national independent network and great wealth of the order throughout Europe and the jealousies this caused in the secular kingdom is considered by most commentators to have been the primary cause of the eventual downfall. Did everybody hear that? In January 1215, William Marshal served as the negotiator during the meeting in the temples between King John and the barons, who demanded that the king should uphold the rights enshrined in the Coronation Charter of his predecessor and the elder brother King Richard I, i.e. time immemorial, 1189. Marshal swore on behalf of the king that the grievances of the barons would be addressed in the summer, which led to the signing by the king of the Magna Carta in June. Marshal later became regent during the reign of John's infant son, King Henry III. Henry later expressed a desire to be buried in the church and to accommodate this, in the early 13th century, the chancel of the original church was pulled down and a new larger chancel was built, the basic form of which survives today. It was consecrated on Ascension Day, 1240. You hear that? And comprised of central aisles and two side aisles, north and south, of identical width. The height of the vault is 36 feet 3 inches, which is 11.05 meters. Although one of Henry's infant sons was buried in the chancel, Henry himself later altered his will to reflect his new wish to be buried in Westminster Abbey. Okay, so it was consecrated on the Ascension Day. So if we see that for Temple Church, let's go back to the succession of Christ. It's right here. The session of Christ or heavenly session is a Christian doctrine that stating that Jesus Christ is seated at the right hand of God the Father in heaven. The word session is archaic now, meaning sitting, although the word formerly meant the act of sitting down. Its meaning is somewhat broader in current English usage and is used to refer to the sitting for the various reasons, such as teaching session or a court or a council being in session, i.e., coronation of the king, i.e., in lieu of what we call the image of Christ, which we know is King Edward the Peaceful. The New Testament also depicts Jesus as standing and walking in heaven, but the session of Christ has special theological significance because of the connection to the role of Christ as king. The session of Christ is one of the doctrines specifically mentioned in the Apostle Creed, where sitting on the right hand of God the Father Almighty immediately follows the statement of the ascension, as you've seen in the Temple Church. All right, you've seen it for yourself in the Temple Church, and that was during the time of Henry II's son John, and Henry II, son of Godfrey, whose father was Pope V, ruler of Jerusalem. Y'all must understand what I'm bringing to you. You must understand. Okay, so if you don't understand that, based off the abstract stories or the concrete stories or the story that's written in the records from our English ancestors, then let's take it, because we know the word circle means church, right? We know that. It's a German word. And the Germans call it Kirk, all right? But the Captain Kirk wasn't in no church on the physical ground, i.e. God's house or God's temple. Captain Kirk was in a spaceship. And we know space is a result of existing here on the plane of things made manifested. Because space and time is occupying space, which we call matter. So when I said, when we learn from what we call autobiographic memory by moving through space and time. No, we can't take our physical bodies back there because it's subject to space and time. But our minds can go back there because it's not subject to space and time as a result of it being in line with the coordinates that's given from the mothership. Okay, the mothership, which is going to take you here. All right, because we know circle, for all these scholars out there, we're going to take it out of the religious context. We're going to take it out of the English context. We're going to put it in what we call geometry. All right, we're going to deal with mathematics here. All right, a circle is a shape consists of all points in the plane that are at given distance from a given point at the center, which we refer to as 360 degrees, which is a circle. All right. As you can see, composed of spheres, just like a diamond. All right, you see this is an upside down diamond, okay, or a pyramid, or a prism. All right, many names. It looks like the globe or the earth sitting inside of what they call a frame. All right. The framers of our space and time and our existence in our space and time is subject to the arbitrary time that was given by our creators. All right. On our existence here on this plane, from third dimension to from 0 dimension to third dimensional on to fourth dimension, as we see here. 0 dimensional, 1 dimensional, 2 dimensional, 3 dimensional. That's through the study of what we call geometry. All right. Let's go back to the globe, the circle, which we know represents the church, because we know the globe with the cross on top of it is called the crucifix globus, which means God got the hand of the world in his hand. All right. Look at all the paintings. You see all the miners holding a crucifix globus in their hand, which is a globe, i.e. orb, with a cross on it. All right. This is called an unknot. We're talking mathematics, y'all. All right. Ambient isotopy. The unknot is not ambient isotopic to the trefoil knot, since one cannot be deformed into the other through a continuous path of homomorphism of the ambient space. They are ambient isotopic, okay? So you can't get trefoil from an unknot, as only if by altering its creation, all right? The unknot is not ambient isotopic to the trefoil knot, since one cannot be deformed into the other through a continuous path of homomorphism of the ambient space. They are ambient isotopic, all right? And mathematical subject of typology or ambient isotopy, also called isotopy, it is a kind of continuous distortion of an ambient space. For example, a manifold. You hear that? Manifold. When God created you, he enveloped you in what we call matter. Taking a sub-manifold to another sub-manifold, for example, in knot theory, one considers two knots the same if one can distort one knot into the other without breaking it. You hear that? Distort one knot into another knot without distorting it, without changing its ambient space. All right? So you can't get a trefoil until you have an unknot, i.e. unknotted. Unknotted. In mathematical theory of knots, the unknot or not knotted or trivial knot is the least knotted of all knots, which means ain't no knots in it. All right? So when we talk about Jesus and the bride of Christ, we know when you get married, you tie the knot. All right? So that means that there's a knot in it. All right? But if there is no knot in it, then that means ain't no marriage yet. That means that it's unknot or not knotted, or what we call a trivial knot. So what is a trivial knot? Because remember, this is the space, the ambient space we're talking about. What does trivial mean? Trivial is information and data that are considered to be of little value to those who don't know what that is, what those things of value really represent. It can be contrasted with general knowledge and common sense. So trivia is as opposed to general knowledge and common sense. So what I'm telling you should be common sense or general knowledge, but as a result of the trivial, it's not common sense to you because to you is of little value. All right. The word is derived from the Latin word trivia, meaning a place where a road splits into two, thus creating a three-way intersection. 1, 2, 3, because the three-way has 3 points divided from that 1. So 1 is the original and the 2 represents trefoil as a result of deformation. It was introduced in the English as the adjective trivial in the 15th and the 16th century. So if that's the case, let's go back to unknown in regards to what we call mathematics. In mathematics, theory knots, unknot, or not knotted, or trivial knot is the least knot of all knots, which means, once again, there is no knots. Intuitively, the unknot is a closed loop of rope without a knot tied into it or unknotted, which means to say it's a closed loop of rope. Once again, a closed loop of rope. The only way a rope, it could loop or a closed loop or hoop or a ring become a rope is if it's cut. All right, if it's cut. And we know when you get the Stafford knot, a Stafford knot was a result of cutting. Because you can't make a trivial knot without cutting it, or can you? All right, you can make it based off my understanding, because I'm going to show you, as it said, ambient isotopic. This represents birth. The unknot is not ambient isotopic to the trivial knot, since one cannot be deformed into the other through a continuous path or homomorphism of the ambient space. They are ambient. In the mathematical subject of typology, an ambient isotopy, or also called an isotopy, is a kind of continuous distortion of an ambient space. For example, a manifold, taking a submanifold to another submanifold. For example, in knot theory, one considers two knots the same if one can distort one knot into the other without breaking it. So this is the example that they give you. Now, let me give you an example. This is an unknot, an unbroken link. It's perpetual, it's eternal, right? Mathematics. An ambient isotopic is being able to deform it without breaking it, because the trivial knot can only be, it's soon to be only created by connecting two parts of the rope together, by intertwining them, either by what we call overhanding or underhanding. So if you're underhanding, that means that you underhanded somebody, right? Or overhanded, meaning that you're just doing it outright, all right? So a deformation in an unknot, i.e. unknotted, i.e. trivial knot, is basically this. That's called the Staffordshire knot, or what they call the overhand knot, originated from this. All right? When it was originally, this is three-dimensional, two-dimensional, one-dimensional, right? Once again, we know what ambient space means. Spaceship, moving through space and time. We know that a circle is called unknotted. And we know that it can be morphosized, which we're in that state of existence here, i.e. three-dimensional state, all right? Well, we know that when you belong to the church, church means Kirk, right? And we know Kirk, according to Captain Kirk, he was in the spaceship as well, but he was not confined to this state of matter. He was human form up there in the spaceship, right? Through what they call beaming somebody up. Beam is light, energy, circuitry. All right, but once that circuitry is cut, then you have no energy. No energy is only darkness. All right, and demons, monsters stay in the dark. All right. So unknotted, i.e., this is God. The mathematical theory of knots, the unknot, not, or trivial knot. We know what trivial knot, stuff that don't matter. People don't care about this, all right? But this should be general information, all right? You didn't have the information until I gave it to you, all right? Not abstract, but concrete by using this. All right? So you either have an unknot or what you call unlinked in mathematical terms. In mathematical field of knot theory, an unlinked is a link that is equivalent under ambient isotopy to finitely make disjoint circles in the plane. To finitely make disjoint circles in the plane. Once again, what is ambient isotopy? Being able to change an unknot to a trefoil knot by taking the ambient space and changing it from one-dimensional to three-dimensional, all right? Without just forming the completeness of the unknot, as we can see here. So if we know that an unknot or a not knotted or a trivial knot is a result which manifests a trefoil knot, which, as I just showed you, through deformation, deforming it, then we must understand how the deformation came about, which goes back to the unlinked. Okay, unlinked. So the common name is a circle, right? That's what they said. A common link name is a circle, but it says unlinked. All right. So when you're unlinked, that means you're not linked, right? You're not linked. To link is to link yourself together or connect yourself together. But as you can see in unknotted and trefoil knot, they both represent the color blue, where you have a red unknotted, which cannot deform the unknot until they link up. All right, until they link up. This is the result of what we call connecting the DNA of a woman and the man. That's why I said, let us make male and female in our own image. All right, that's what they said. But we know the word matter and mother is the same. We take on the physical form through our mother, which is the source from which we grow. That's the matter that God created us from. All right, and He took that matter from nothingness. This represents nothingness because there is no beginning and end. Zero, nothing. Check this out. So this is subject to what we call the knot theory. But in the knot theory, dealing with knots, the unilink is not there. Because as I showed you in ambient isotopy, it represents from a unknotted to a threefold knot, as you can see here. Trefold. All right, trefold knot. Let's go back. I just repeat it so you guys can really understand what I'm trying to show you. So both of these knots, whether a trefold knot or unknot, not knotted or trivial knot, it's all subject to what we call theory governing knotting. Not just these knots, but also what we call the Stafford knot, because the Stafford knot is what we call, as a result of what we call the trefold knot. Once again, the Stafford knot or the overhand knot resulted from the trefold knot. And you can't get a trefold knot till you get the unknotted. And you didn't get the unknotted, you didn't get knotted until you bumped into this unlink. All right? And that represents the woman. That represents the woman. Let's prove it. Not theory. Okay. Knot theory. In topology, knot theory, it's a study of mathematical knots. While inspired by knots which appear in daily life, such as those in shoelaces and ropes, a mathematical knot differs in the ends. A mathematical knot differs in that the ends are joined so it cannot be undone. Once again, in topology, knot theory is the study of mathematical knots. While inspired by knots which appear in daily life, such as those in shoelaces and ropes, and mathematical knots, ropes, a mathematical knot differs in the ends. The mathematical knot different in that the ends are joined so it cannot be undone. The simplest knot being the ring, or i.e. the unknot, or i.e. the circle, or i.e. the church, i.e. the circle, church, and chancery. In mathematical language, a knot is the embedding of a circle in three-dimensional Euclidean space. Two mathematical knots are equivalent and one can be transformed into the other via a deformation, as I just said, upon itself known as ambient isotopy. This transformation corresponds to manipulation of knotted strings that do not involve cutting it or passing it through itself. So as you can see, these are rubber bands. You see the unknot or not knotted or trivial knot, then you see the trefold knot. And this is a result of ambient isotopy by deformation, but you can't get this until you get the unlink, i.e. that matter. Matter means mother, okay? Matter means mother, but you don't see unilink there. Why? Because of knots. While inspired by knots, what is a knot? A knot is an intentional complication in cordage, which may be practical or decorative or both. Practical knots are classified by functioning, including hitches, bends, loops, knots, and splices. All right. So knots are exact or an intentional result of what they call cordage. So what is cordage? Cordage means rope. Because it said, without cutting the rope. A rope is a group of yarns, plies, fibers, or strands, i.e. DNA strands, that are twisted or braided together into larger and stronger forms. Ropes have tensile strength and so can be used for dragging and lifting. Rope is thicker and strong than similar constructed cord, strings, or twine. Construction, as you can see, this takes on the same pattern as the trefoil. All right, you got 3, which makes 1, but the rope is cut. Once again, you got 3 plus 1, but the only way you make the 3 is by, like I said, overhanding, i.e. Staffordshire knot. Staffordshire knot is called an overhand knot, and an overhand knot it creates a trefoil knot. Let's prove it. So as we read, an unknotted or not knotted or trivial knot, which is the general information that you're supposed to be knowing. And when it comes to knot, a knot is in itself unknotted, which can be deformed and created to a trefoil knot by deformation. So that means that if this is the case, then we are deformed beings, right? We're deformed beings. We know that a knot theory, a branch of mathematics, deals with the trefoil knot. It's the simplest example of a non-trivial knot, because a trivial knot is a knot that's not knotted. Okay, so it says the trefoil knot is a name after the 3-leaf clover or trefoil plant. All right, you know what a 3-leaf clover is, right? Now, why do they say when you find a 4-leaf clover that you get lucky? Why? Because that means that you went from 3-dimensional to 4th-dimensional. And the only way to get to 4th-dimensional is if you're lucky. You have a better chance of getting a lottery ticket than to get a chance on moving on to 4th dimension without this understanding of what we call, or what they said, knot theory, understanding of what we call knot theory. You need to have a standing of knot theory. All right. So, all right, let's go ahead. So as we said, an unknotted, unknotted or trivial knot or unknotted is not the same as the overhand knot. That's what they want you to believe that it's not. Because in ambient isotopy, let's go back there once and for all before I close. Unknot is just a loop. It's called unknotted, trivial knot, or unknot, which means trivial knot means that it's of none concern. All right. It says to a knot, there is a unknot is embedded typological circle and 3 spheres that is ambient isotopic. Let's look at it again. In mathematics, mathematically, you cannot be cut from the original knot that you came from. All right? Because the knot you came from was an unknotted knot. Right? It was perpetual. And mathematical subject of topology and ambient isotopy, also called an H isotopy, is a kind of continuous, perpetual, forever distortion of an ambient space. For example, a manifold. Here's the word manifold. taking a sub-manifold to another set manifold means rising. For example, in knot theory, one considered two knots the same as one. For example, in knot theory, one considers two knots the same if one can distort one knot into the other without breaking. Okay, so if you can change three into one without distorting the one, i.e., cutting it, then it's good. Actually, what it's saying. All right, but we're going to show you how they're playing gods with us. All right, because they changed the one to three by cutting it. By cutting it. Let's see. So we know that from unknotted, not knotted, or trivial knot was a result, trivial knot resulted from the unknotted, and that unknotted did not have to be cut, because you don't see no cuts in this trivial knot, do you? All right, you don't see no cuts in this trivial knot, do you? It's like a pretzel at all. Let's scroll down. Video on making. So that means God is creating a trifold. This is God, because when you were created from matter, matter was created from nothingness. So if nothingness, it had to be this. Because if the time of man began, the time of man become no more. So that means that there should not be beginning. Man's existence on either plane is perpetual. How we can prove it? Mathematics. Now, this is how they say creation happened. That created the circuitry, i.e. Frankenstein, i.e. your monster, i.e. your human being. And this represents God's creation. This represents God and us, right here, without breaking the line of succession, all right? As a result of the mathematics in reference to what we call a circle. And a circle means church, but you're not taught that because of your teachers, right? So that's why you could not measure up to this task. We know a circle deals with geometry, right? From 0 dimension to 1 dimensional, 2 dimensional, 3 dimensional, on to high dimensions. So I warn you. I warn you all. I have come for you. Right? But Jesus said, they said, when Jesus came, his own receives him not. I done had a dream where I was rising. I heard a voice say, well done, my faithful servant. And I looked down and seen all families and friends. And all I heard was, depart from thee, I know thee not. That was an abstract dream that's manifesting in this present day. But why? Because I'm a servant of the church, right? I'm not only the servant of the church, but I'm the king of the church. And the church is my bride. So come home, my bride, and take your place. With that, I say, peace.